Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says the Bible is his worldview. I sure hope that means he's about to start canceling our debts because, according to the Bible, that was the first thing Jesus ever talked about. This Christmas, let's celebrate Jesus, the debt-canceling economic radical. Plenty of modern evangelicals will come at you with the line that Jesus somehow supported capitalism. That's hogwash, and not just because capitalism wouldn't exist for another 1,500 years. He was ahead of his time, but not like that. Both Matthew and Mark talk about the homicidal reaction Jesus got when he preached in his hometown of Nazareth. But only Luke tells us the words that spark that anger. Luke describes this event as Jesus' very first public act as he was beginning to preach. It goes like this. Jesus goes to the temple in his hometown of Nazareth. There, he unrolls the scroll of Isaiah and reads, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come." According to the story, it was a mic drop moment. Everyone sat in stunned silence. With all eyes on Jesus, he said, "The scripture you've just heard has been fulfilled this very day." Then an angry mob ran him out of town and tried to chuck him off a cliff. No joke. Look it up. The significance of Jesus choosing this particular passage of scripture as his show-stopping homecoming number cannot be overstated. The meaning of what Jesus was saying would have been quite clear to an ancient audience, yet has lost all context for a modern reader. When Jesus proclaimed that the year of the Lord's favor had returned, he was saying the time for Jubilee had finally come. That particular passage in Isaiah read by Jesus is a specific reference to Leviticus 25 and the law of Jubilee. So, what was the law of Jubilee? The ancient Hebrews operated on a 7-year schedule, where in the 7th year no land was tilled. After a series of 7 blocks of 7, the 49th year was to be the year of Jubilee, when all slaves would be freed, all debts would be canceled, and all land was to be redistributed amongst the families who had it in the time of Joshua. Now, there's a common problem for readers of the Bible or any ancient document in perceiving the difference between literal and figurative language. Frequently, there are multiple ways of interpreting the same text. A lot of the time, if you hear about the year of Jubilee at Sunday school or during a sermon, the reverend will say that Jesus was being metaphorical, talking about a figurative slate cleaning or washing of sin when one decides to follow Jesus or become born again. There's nothing inherently wrong with that interpretation, but to a person sitting in that crowd in Nazareth 2,000 years ago, the words of Jesus would have meant something very concrete. Within the historical context of that time, what Jesus was saying would have been startling. Everybody already knew what the Torah said about redistributing the land. The property codes of Leviticus supposedly went all the way back to the time of Moses. By the time Jesus showed up in Nazareth, no one alive could remember a year of Jubilee ever happening. As Reverend Howard Best writes, the combination of Roman rule, compliant fat cats, and religious elites made observance of Jubilee impossible. During a Jubilee, the rich were supposed to give up their land so the poor could have a shot at being productive members of society. By the time of Jesus, the poor had given up on this ever happening again, despite the clear language in those holy legal documents. Jesus was like, "Yo, it says it right here. Why aren't we doing this?" Everyone who heard what Jesus said would have understood its meaning. It had been far too long since a year of Jubilee. It was time to shake up the Etch-a-Sketch and give the poor their shot. Cancel all debts and start over. While you might have been taught to understand this message symbolically, within historical context, such a suggestion would have had very real economic implications for those living at that time. To come into the temple and start talking about redistributing land from the rich and giving it to the poor would have been an outrage to the entrenched interests in Nazareth. So it's really no surprise Jesus was run out of town for saying that. But it makes me think of what House Speaker Mike Johnson just told Fox News last month. He said, "I'm a Bible-believing Christian. Someone asked me today in the media. They said, 'People are curious. What does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun?' I said, 'Well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview. That's what I believe. And so I make no apologies for it.' I think that means that Mike Johnson is ready to start canceling debts like Jesus wanted to do. Sounds great to me. I think people should start confirming that's what he meant, because I bet it would be pretty popular. If the Bible truly informs Mike Johnson's worldview, he should declare a jubilee on our debts. It was literally the first thing Jesus wanted to talk about when he started preaching. We should listen. Thanks, Jesus. Please give a like, follow, favorite, and sign up for my free Substack, where you can get more detail in every post. Merry Christmas to all, and let us make them pay.